Hello everyone. Very excited about today, and we kind of embarked on this dark goddess journey, which was kind of an invitation from another group I'm in that started off this kind of going back towards the dark goddess, which is the work I kind of started out as an astrologer with. And those of you who've been on the journey will know if we've gone into these trans-Neptunian objects, which are much further out in the solar system. And it feels very connected to this kind of coming back. And one of the themes is this theme of life and death. And myself, I've had to kind of face a lot of death issues in the past year, and I know that some of you have, either through human loss and a couple of you through lots of animals of yours dying. So it feels like we've sort of been on this journey of facing death, and now we're coming back to, firstly we did Hecate last week, and this week we're going to be doing Morgan. And it feels like this line, these lines between life and death are kind of really important. And when Richard Rudd did this meditation that opened the dream arc, he talked about these lines, these arcs of lines of life and death. And I kind of really felt this energy in the collective of like this, it's almost like we're opening up through the experience of death, having to face either our own or others' death. Something in us is really opening up in a new way, as a collective. Of course, we've always faced that journey as human beings, but it does feel like that's the kind of link between things as I'm seeing it right now. Okay, so I'm going to do a presentation on Morgan. It's very interesting because Morgan is not what you think she is, and she's a shapeshifter, so that's absolutely perfect in a way. And then at the end we'll have some sharing time. If you haven't looked up your Morgan and you want to, you can go to astro.com, and she's number 3180. So I've just put that in the chat. So what you have to do is go put your chart in. If you haven't done that already right now, you might want to do that later. And then you put in the extended chart box the number 3180, and then you create the chart and it'll tell you where Morgan is in your chart. And then there's also a button that says the transits now, and it can tell you where Morgan is right now, but I'm going to tell you where she is today anyway. So so you can find out about that. And if I haven't ever sent you the HD document to convert from astrology to gene keys, I'm very happy to send that to you, or you can search online for it. I think it's called the HD synthesis document. Okay, so Morgan, I'm just going to do share this little presentation that I've made for you. Okay. So I'm just going to go back a bit to when I was in Wales earlier in the year. And some of you remember the story that these Celtic goddesses, they sometimes called the ladies of the lake, started to kind of call to me. And so I went to two places in Wales that I found out were connected with the wizard Merlin. One was where he was as a boy, where he released these dragons that were trapped in the earth. And these dragons are basically telluric ley lines, big ley lines in that part of the world that I've been working with for a while, actually. And then the other place, Bardsey Island, is a very well-known sacred place in Britain. And this is a place where Merlin is said to have been caught in a glass tower as an initiation. Now, just after having this experience, I was still in Wales in a friend's garden, and I had this encounter with a butterfly. And it was so amazing because my first picture of this butterfly was really crap. And then I got closer and closer, and it was like opening its wings for me, going, come on, take like this amazing picture. And you can see the apples there. So the apples are a symbol of the Celtic fairy otherworld. And this particular butterfly is called a gatekeeper butterfly. And so I got this kind of powerful message in that moment that we were being kind of granted access to the other world. And it felt like the Venus journey itself is the gatekeeper. So as we go through the unfurling bliss of these morning star gates, then we get deeper and deeper into discovering more of this other world within ourselves. You know, it's encoded in our DNA, the kind of human contact with the fairy people. And Morgan Le Fay, as she's sometimes known, is one of these characters, a queen who is both otherworldly, but she kind of mates with a human king. And so you get this kind of lots of stories in the Celtic tradition about our, you know, the possibility of fairy in our DNA. And I definitely feel it in all of us anyway. So the first of these ladies of the lake, there's 9 of them. And the first one that popped in is called Nimue. Sometimes her name is also known as Vivian. And we talked about her as an initiator of Merlin, the older man, the man who might hold the wisdom. And yet this young priestess has something that he needs in order to grow in his journey. Okay, then we get to Morgan. So I'm going to read you this little bit. This is from a poem that was written in 1150 AD by Geoffrey of Monmouth, and it's called the Vita Merlini. The Merlini is referring to Merlin. So this is about Morgan as Lady of Avalon. Avalon is a broader term for the place Glastonbury, which most of you will have heard of. The island of apples, which men call the Fortunate Isle, gets its name because it produces all things of itself. Their fields have no need of the ploughs of farmers. Of its own accord, it produces grain and grapes and apple trees, especially well known for apple trees, Avalon. And this is interesting because we talked a lot in our group about fertility and the fertility of ourselves and our ideas and our gifts. So this is continuing from the poem. There are 9 sisters, these are the ladies of the lake, who rule by a pleasing set of laws, those who come to them from our country. She who is first of them is more skilled in the healing art and excels her sisters in the beauty of her person. Morgan is her name, and she has learned what useful properties all the herbs contain, so she can cure sick bodies. She knows an art by which to change her shape and to cleave the air on new wings. So we're going to be talking about some of the themes of this, shape-shifting into birds. We have this connection with the otherworldly apples appearing there. Also that she's a ruler, she's a queen. And yeah, so, okay, so this particular painting is a pre-Raphaelite painting showing Morgan. Now she shapeshifts into different animals, but the most common one is the raven, which is seen as a bird of sovereignty in Britain. The crow, we've got a good story about the crow, hopefully to hear later, that happened today. The white cow and the eel. So I thought it was interesting, the white cow, because that's gene key 2 in the dream arc, and the cow's been coming up quite a lot as well. Okay, so let's talk about Morgan as a healer, first of all, and she's especially known as a healer with potions. So this is another pre-Raphaelite painting. The pre-Raphaelites love to paint these King Arthur Holy Grail stories. So here we see King Arthur has died. He's actually been killed by Morgan's son called Mordred, same derivation of the name there. And Morgan is the one who helps to, she kind of takes him into the West. So he doesn't come back to life as normal human being, but he has this kind of other life. He goes into the other world, and she heals him with plant potions. So Morgan in our birth chart is something we could look at, where we have Morgan might tell us something about our healing abilities, perhaps with plants, and we're going to talk about some other areas with her as well. And this connection with death we see here, like she's literally, on the scale of Jesus being able to bring someone back from the dead. So Morgan is known as this kind of form of healing called necromancy. And I've been watching this really interesting and really good program it's on Channel 4 here, but I'm imagining you could get it. It's called The Red Door. What was the name? It's in Italian, actually. It's an Italian series, and this girl that I'm showing here, played by Valentina Romani, but her name is Vanessa actually in the thing. She can see dead people, and so can her mother. And this is a gift that's kind of, they've had to hide, her mother's had to hide it, because people don't accept this gift. They think you're evil or you're crazy if you are able to see the dead. So if you're interested in this whole thing about healing the dead, necromancy, speaking to the dead, I really recommend this program. And the whole way she looks, actually, this character Vanessa is very Morgan-like. Morgan's often depicted with black hair and quite raven-like in her appearance. So while at the moment Morgan kind of came into my world, we went to see this exhibition by a famous sculptor called Barbara Hepworth, who was born, she was born in 1903 and died in 1975. And here she's depicted as a Morrighan. You can see this kind of feathery cloak, and it's echoed in the seaweed underneath her. And she's quite an amazing woman, because she was a a sculptress at a time when very few women went into art, never mind like creating sculptures from huge pieces of stone. And some of her pieces refer to Delphi. So I'm pretty sure, reading between the lines, that in some way she identified as being a priestess and in this kind of Morrighan kind of archetype. She smoked like a trooper, actually, and she died in a fire caused by her own cigarette, which feels like quite a kind of edgy Morgan sort of feel to it as well. Okay, so the origins of the name Morgan come from the Irish goddess, the Morrigan, which means the Great Queen. And the Welsh goddess Rhianna, whose title is Rigantona, also means the Great Queen. Morgan is a character created by Malory, who's a writer in the 13th century, and they're called the Vulgate Cycles about the Holy Grail. So Morgan is taken from this kind of Morrigan from older Celtic archetypes, but there's very few written records of that because it was an oral tradition. So a lot of it really, and what I'm doing here, is intuitive, feeling into guesswork about what Morgan is really about. But she does appear in stories married to King Uriens of Gore, a 6th century king of Scotland. And she's a queen there, where she's an otherworldly queen, and she's married a human king, thus producing this kind of stream of DNA that is otherworldly. And her son Mordred is ultimately responsible for the death of her half-brother, King Arthur. And in quite a lot of these stories, she has quite a lot of lovers that she often meets at fords. She's quite well known for enchanting and kind of imprisoning these men she's in love with. Now, this is in the later medieval stories, so this is put in a bit of a dark slant on her later on. But in the beginning, and in that Fords and Crossroads, she definitely has connections with Hecate, I would say. But when we look back, like to the Celtic, the purest archetype we can get is actually the mother, but she's both compassionate and fierce. So she's not kind of Mother Mary, she's got this dark and light side. Morgan in stories, she's a protagonist, an antagonist, a provocateur. So she often creates movement in the story. She draws people out into the open in a way. And she doesn't translate well into medieval texts, where her kind of independent and sensual otherworldly nature is not understood at all. And so in a Christian moral context, she starts more and more to be seen as an enchantress. She's portrayed as the sister of King Arthur, who hates him and betrays him. And she's seen as more and more evil. And like in the modern, like the BBC made a film about King Arthur, and she's seen as really negative in that. But I hope that you'll be seeing, like I'm trying to put the positive side of who Morgan actually is. But she does represent this duality in us, that we are both light and dark. None of us are all light and fluffy sweethearts. We all have this edge to us, and this is our Morgan side. And among women priestesses, pagan witches in Britain, she's had quite a revival in the last, say, 20 years, reclaiming her dual and otherworldly nature. And there's a book called The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, some of you may have read, which kind of really rehabilitated her archetype to a large extent. Okay, so this is the most bizarre part though, because having gone into Morgan all excited and like, oh my God, there is an asteroid called Morgan. I then find out that the asteroid Morgan isn't named after Morgan at all. So that was really funny, but I decided to kind of keep on this path because right, let me just close this box again so you can see a bit better. So she's actually named after an astronomer called William Morgan, who isn't the one who discovered her, but this astronomer did something called morphology. And morphology is the study of how asteroids come to be named as their archetypes through their physical properties or where they are in the solar system, that kind of thing. So it's actually a kind of shape-shifting that William Morgan is interested in the actual asteroids. And also Morgan, the priestess, is also known as a really good astronomer. So that's one connection. And there were like just so many synchronicities with Morgan coming in that I felt I couldn't ignore her, even though she's not who I thought she was in the first place. And maybe I feel that's actually an important part of her story, is she's not who we think she is, basically. So what I found out is she's exactly conjunct my natal sun, which is 47 line 1, 17 degrees Virgo, and also my Venus star point in the 41, which I know a number of us have that Venus star point in the 41, which is the star codon. And this kind of energy of the 47 of transmutation, transfiguration, bringing people back from the dead. It's like the life to death energy transfiguration. And also in the 47 is the raven in the dream arc. So there's so many connections with that 47. And also, as I started investigating Morgan, she just moved into Virgo, which is the sign of the goddess. But also she's in Gene Key 59, which is my EQ. And a very important energy for all of us at this time. You know, it's all about this move from dishonesty to intimacy to transparency. So it's at the heart of new relationship dynamics, really. I seem to have missed one somewhere along the line. So just to say, the main source of my research on Morgan is The Ladies of the Lake by John and Caitlin Matthews. Here we go. So this is what was going on when Morgan was discovered. The sun was at 15 degrees Virgo. There's a lot of Virgo activity, which is Gene Key 64, line 4, moving from doubt to illumination. Morgan at the discovery was at 13 Aries 31, so that's some nice numerology there, 13 Aries 31, and she was in Gene Key 21, line 5, moving from control to authority to valor. So if we return to the original meaning of Morgan's name is Great Queen, we can see that she is meant to be in a position of authority, which she has kind of lost through this demonization of the patriarchy. Venus was at 1 degree Scorpio when she was discovered, and that's Gene Key 50, line 5, moving from corruption to harmony. And the last but one cycle, the Venus star point was 50, line 4, and the first star point in Libra. So that feels like Morgan is connecting in to our whole experience of this particular Venus cycle. And then Uranus was at 1 Virgo, which is Gene Key 59, line 2, moving from dishonesty to transparency. And that is also where Morgan was the day I discovered her, thanks to Tina, who some of us know. And then 3 of the Liliths, Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, and Dark Moon Lilith, were all conjunct in Libra. So Lilith holds, I feel, a very similar energy to Morgan in this dark goddess. She's been demonized, and also alluding to the importance of the relationship energy somehow with Morgan. And today, Morgan is at 5 Virgo, which is Gene Key 59, line 6. So while I know I'm not the only one who's been exploring Morgan, she's been moving through Gene Key 59. Yeah, and I kind of feel, so I've been watching, as I say, this program, I'm going to stop sharing, called The Red Door. Porto Rosso, that's what it is in Italian. Porto meaning door, rosso, red. But also, like, my whole journey this past year with Adam's last partner having died is there's this person on the other side who's like, there's 3 of us, and one of them is on the other side. And so there's this daily kind of connection with the other side, you know, the life and death. It feels like we're constantly in this mesh of life and death. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking about, you know, some of you have been sharing your stories, and I know some of you have had very recent death experiences as well. And I feel like Morgan helps us kind of navigate the death experience, I guess. But she also has these incredible healing abilities through astronomy, through potions, through through the whole life-death connection, maybe as a guide to people who have died or who are still living. But yeah, it'd be really interesting now to kind of find out if you know where your Morgans are. I know some of you have had like these death experiences the past year with humans and animals. You might want to share something about that. I have to invite Pat to share first about your experience this morning. Let me just switch off the recording. So it's so cool. So yeah, when things are in the early degrees, it generally means that you are beginning a journey with an archetype. When you get to the later degrees, it means you have already gone on quite a journey with that archetype. So that's generally how astrologers look at it. So yeah, Morgan in Capricorn. Capricorn's like an earth sign for the winter solstice. It's when the sun moves into the winter solstice. So it's kind of about the steady growth, Morgan, in Capricorn. And yeah, and she'll be an ambitious Morgan in Capricorn. Yeah. And Capricorn's all about alchemy as well. So that's a healing modality that's very 47th gene key as well, I think. So yeah. So just for people who are watching this later, just pin myself for a moment. You can join this live conversation on a platform called Soul Tribe Online. I'll put the link there. And you can contact me as well if you are interested in goddess asteroid readings. And yeah, so thanks everyone for participating today. It's been really lovely. And yeah, Danny's about to start her class as well. So if you want to, there's body talk coming up as well. So yeah, I might go and just get another cup of tea and come back and join you for half an hour anyway. Well,
Thank you,
thank
Alice.
you. Okay, just to say as well, rebirth sequence, we're going to be working on our dream arc animals for our radiance key this week. So we can have a look at them on the call if you don't know what they are. So that's Wednesday at 8 a.m. So I'll see you then. No. Bye.
Thank you, Allison.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
It's beautiful.